The thing about the sewer plant, that was a deliberate effort on our former attorney, Mr. Inglesino, to sabotage this town to getting into conformance. Because if we weren't in conformance, then we couldn't have possibly been impeded by the Highlands process in any way, because we weren't in conformance. So he made that up, and he threw in a bunch of other things in Resolution 2014-102, where he alleged if we were in conformance or continued with conformance, it would sabotage all these other developments. But he never addressed the fact that perhaps if they looked at these developments, and people knew the impacts they would have, that they might not want them. So it's a developer show, and Waterview proved that, and public housing was used as a fear tactic, and according to the own criteria of Highlands and COA itself, the steep slopes, the forest, the environmental sensitivity of that landscape that was never properly acknowledged would have saved it. It's a prime groundwater recharge area, some of the best soils, and the aesthetic values, and the overwhelming opposition, and yet it took place. That's still a disgrace. I'll never forget that. The mere fact that the water is a public trust, and it's one of the most precious resources that government, as a common entity representing us all, protects, should inspire us even more, because, you know, water is life, to make it short, and it is a public trust. And there is even a legislative preamble that addresses water protection, its health, safety, and welfare of the people. I want to bring something up. We're talking about the something else, the plastic ban, that we're a local plastic ban. I want to make a suggestion that no golf course is the first example in a local ordinance to forbid they use styrofoam cups and plastic straws. Most of it goes into the waste, but when you putter around landscape, you see that stuff. People toss it and everything. But right there, it's a municipal utility. We could set a good example by our first municipal ordinance to ban the plastic straws and the styrofoam cups at the Knoll Golf Utility. So I'd like you to think about that. And the lack of recycle enforcement in this town, and it's kind of funny because the recycle's been around for a long time, even before it was mandatory. It's even in our master plan. So I'd like to know why our sanitation officials said it was going to take 6 months. And I think that we should be keeping up with them on what they are doing to the conclusion of the 6 months, because I see no reason why it should take forever to have the businesses with the color-coded recycling, and we have to have the enforcement. There's no sense in paying somebody to do a job that if people don't have any personal responsibility, and the corporations that make this stuff apparently don't care, it's time for good government to step in. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
If I can. How are you? Oh, hi, good. How you doing? Listen, let me, is
Please
it okay?
state your name and address,
Yeah.
please.
Ellen Stammen, formerly of this wonderful community, and still am. I'm a wannabe, right? Parsippany. Anyway, the bag was provided by, and it's supposedly a biodegradable bag, was Mary Bazicki. Okay. But I want to say, in all seriousness, he does do a great job. You're very passionate, but sometimes we have to have a little humor. So I figured, as a present, now I was going to give you this, but you didn't come to the last meeting. So I have a bottle of Jack Daniels.
God.
But, you know, he's gonna
Plastic
dispose of
bottle?
this properly, and then dispose of the plastic bottle properly. And then I think I have another one, I didn't know what you drank. So there's another one. So after you enjoy a drink or a toast to Parsippany, please let people know how you dispose of them properly. And here's a bag that they say is supposed to be biodegradable, but.
I still have Mary's cup that she gave me, and it still looks the same
Does
after
it still-
3 months.
yeah, So here you go.
I'll tell you what, I'm not
But thanks for your
I'm
beer.
not a whiskey drinker, I'm a beer man, but I will toast the Parsippany going into Highlands conformance with this quality whiskey here, distilled whiskey. And thank you for your hard work as our town administrator. All right.
She said she was going to do it. She said she was going to do it. I heard dinner. She said, I'm going to go up there.
My name is Bob Venezia. I live at 102 Brooklawn Drive. At the last meeting, we learned something from Mr. Hanley that the council members must never forget. Namely, that the developer is unwilling to assume any risks associated with the pilot, but it's perfectly okay for a township to assume them. Because of this acknowledged imbalance in the amount of risk taken by the two parties, it's highly likely that there are other imbalances in the pilot agreement that are favorable to the developer. Before the final vote on the pilot is taken in 2 weeks, the council must identify and amend as many of these imbalances as possible. You already corrected one of them when you changed the wording of the agreement to tax individually owned units in the conventional manner rather than at pilot rates. Tonight, I would like you to include another amendment. Although the district at 1515 is obligated to provide for 68 affordable units, only 34 are being constructed. The developer is compensating Parsippany for the remaining 34 units by making a $75,000 housing trust fund payment for each unit. Compared to the $75,000 per unit that Parsippany will receive, I calculate that the value to Stanbury is about $375,000. And here's how I come up with that number. As outlined in Exhibit 10 of the pilot, Stanbury receives about $1,800 more per month for a market value 2-bedroom apartment versus an affordable 2-bedroom apartment. By paying Parsippany a one-time amount of $75,000 per unit, Stanbury can rent the unit at market rates from day one. As a result, they will receive an extra $1,800 a month for each unit for the next 30 years. At that rate, Stanbury's initial investment will be repaid in 4 years, and then they will collect an additional $21,000 in rent for the next 26 years. It's a great investment if you can get it. I'd like to get a piece of that. Looking at it another way, if you wanted to supplement your own retirement income with an annuity that pays out $1,800 a month for 30 years, you would be required to make an upfront payment of $375,000. In effect, the developer is paying Parsippany $75,000 for a transaction that is worth $375,000 to him. The council must not allow Stanbury to take advantage of the township in this manner. If the pilot is truly a win-win agreement as advertised, then Parsippany should share at least 50% of the developer's windfall. In fairness to our taxpayers, the pilot should be amended to specify a housing trust fund payment of about $185,000 per unit. If the developer refuses to accept this amount, Parsippany would be best served if it removed any housing trust fund payment from the pilot and demanded that the entire 68-unit obligation be designated as affordable units at the District at 1515 project site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Venezia, can I ask, through you, Council President, can we have those calculations? Would you submit those notes so that I can take a closer look at your math?
Okay, just hang on 1 second.
I mean, I'll just take that
You can give
sheet
it-
right
you
there.
can give it to- you can give them to Khalid. He'll make copies and pass it out to him.
Yeah, right here, Bob.
All right, all it is you plugged it into a,
Okay, I'll just take that, right, that you just read off is enough. Can I just have what you read off?
So he
Bob,
that
I'll
okay?
make a quick copy and I'll bring it right back to you.
Well,
Yeah, I like a copy too.
Yeah, I
I
want
plugged
copies
it
too,
into
please.
one of these annuity calculators.
Oh, I trust you. I just want to see it.
and I have
Narrative
a
is
copy
fine.
of that, too.
Claude,
Narrative
did
is
you make
okay.
copies
Thank
for
you.
all of
Yeah,
us?
make copies for everybody right now.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We got Beverly's coming up.
Okay.
She's leaving, she's leaving the township, because she cannot, no, she told me she's leaving the township, because she cannot take any chances of getting another subsidy of $2,500. Not shoveling her hydrant, she's a hydrant company. And she's been cited a couple of times. I don't know whether she's paid, but she's been cited. So she's leaving. That's what she told me, I don't know.
We were supposed to look at this 9 months ago.
Yeah, yep.
Good evening, council members.
Good evening, Beverly.
As I came in, I saw that beautiful tree outside. And I decided, instead of talking to you, as I've been for over 10 years, I will now talk to the Parsippany Secret Santa. I will ask Santa to help a less fortunate Parsippany resident and fulfill my request, which is for a fair fine for snow removal for sidewalks and fire hydrants at $1,200 per day for each. The fine for 1 day is $2,400, and for 7 days it's $16,800 snow removal for one household. Oh, Santa, how can Parsippany be such a Scrooge to its residents with that kind of fine? Most towns are only charging maybe $70 fine per day for that project. And Santa, please do something about the unfair amount. And while you're doing that, would you do something for the fire department helpers? In some districts, some help us old, frail, unfortunate. Others take the tax money and, well, what do they do with it? Their brothers share and do the right thing and help us out. Please, Santa, do something after all these years. You come down the streets in the fire trucks, ho-ho-hoing it. Please give these firemen shovels for Christmas, the ones that don't have it. Mr. Shovel would like some company. Please give them the shovel so they can help us out. Many of us really need them because we don't have money for fines. Santa, if you stop at my house, I'll have something sweet and something hot for you, non-alcoholic, to spread your happiness for the new year. Please, Santa, hear my plea. We need your help. Do something for the new year about these fines. Please, please, Santa. And everybody, have a Merry Christmas and a very healthy, happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No questions? But seriously, guys, $16,500 a week for fines for the fire hydrant and the sidewalk is excessive.
So Beverly, we can't have an A and B conversation, so once you're finished, we can talk about it.
I'm finished.
Are you sure? So I will say, business administrator, this has come up last winter with the snow removal. At the end of the winter last year, we asked specifically that it be looked into either reevaluating the fines, figuring out a plan going forward, because we understand that the position that the residents are in, not everyone is able to clear the snow on their own. And so I would just like to bring that to your attention now. So going forward, that could be something for your agenda.
Through you, Council President, I met with Scott and Jen Veely today from the Housing Division. Scott is in the process of setting up a meeting with Jen and also Chief Miller to discuss that very ordinance, not only looking at the fee structure and the fines associated with it, but also looking at the time frame in which snow would need to be removed after the end of a snowfall. So that is currently being worked on by the administration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So when's it gonna happen?
They're working on it.
Hopefully soon.
Soon, you mean
Hi,
4th of July? It's excessive. It's a fearful, horrible to live with for this little old lady being responsible for a fire hydrant that all my neighbors are getting rebates on their homeowner's insurance for. It's money that they do theirs. I don't care if they don't like me. That's not the issue. The issue is do the right thing. And I tell people in other towns, they said, how much money?
Well, I think now it will be with Mr. Kazmark and Mr. Lott. And I think we will make some headway soon.
Good, snowflakes are due tomorrow.
Really? Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Okay.
All right.
Oh,
Thank you.
I would
Thank you,
love to
Beverly.
do
Thank you.
individually for the rest of my life, if you finally,
Well, we want you to be a happy resident, Beverly. You know that.
I'm not, happiness is what, I don't like being scared.
Okay. Well, then we'll do our best not to frighten you.
I'm fearful of my town, of
No,
my
we will do
town.
our best.
Don't punish me because I can't do, but I also, this inequality between some fire districts shoveling out and some not. They're all taking the money. They should all do the same thing. Either you do it, you shovel for the whole town fire departments, or none of you do it, but you don't do some districts and not others. I also,
Yep.
when I,
1 minute.
most residents don't
1
know what
minute.
the fine is. Did you realize that? And they give you this, well, we all get together and we help each other out. Not everybody wants to do that. Just make it a level playing field. Be fair.
We will.
And I meant it when I said, I've known all of you for a good many years. And have a healthy, happy New Year. And
Happy
keep doing
Hanukkah.
You
what
too.
can
Happy Hanukkah to you
because
too.
This is a wonderful town. You had the menorah thing the other night, you had the senior prom, you have the senior center, which is wonderful. All of you, come more often and see how we enjoy it. The Lake Hiawatha Library is a home away
Time.
from home too.
Beverly, time's up. Thank you.
I'll keep quiet and waddle off.
Thank you.
Beverly's a hard act to follow. My name is Elliot Ruga. I'm the Policy and Communications Director for the New Jersey Highlands Coalition, and we're located in neighboring Boonton. And I have a question for the Highlands Council staff. The 88 municipalities of the Highlands have a great deal of diversity in landscapes, from rolling farm
Sir,
fields.
just
and-
speak into the mic.
Speak into the mic.
rolling farm fields in Hunterdon County to horse and Lexus estates in Somerset County and deep forests north of Route 80. Parsippany represents another end of that spectrum with a very dense population, very highly developed. So I'm just wondering what sort of ideas can you bring to the table for them to consider for a community such as this to improve their community. They have challenges that other communities don't have. A lot of vacant office spaces and probably areas in need of redevelopment. So I'm just asking if you can stretch your creative juices to see what you can bring to them.
Make it a joint answer. Thank you, Elliot. So, in response to some Parsippany specific discussions and ideas that we have, some of which come out of meetings that we've had with municipal officials, it appears that some of the major concerns, is this on? You can hear me, right? You don't, I don't hear this.
It's for the record. For the
Oh,
media.
okay. Some of the major concerns of the town include issues like what we talked about earlier, which is water use and conservation plans. I know that quality and quantity of water in Parsippany is a major concern to residents and to the council. So we can help them, as Mary Ju discussed earlier, with figuring out what is the usage and what are the major ways that Parsippany can conserve its water usage and obviously save more for its residents into the future. Another major issue that has been discussed is stormwater management and flooding in Parsippany. And one of the things that was sort of an aha moment for a couple of us sitting around a table was the discussion, and many of you may know this, of how much impervious surfaces contribute to flooding and stormwater management. And when you think about it that way and you look around Parsippany, you realize we have an awful lot of parking lots, many of which are underutilized. So one example might be to utilize one of our stormwater management planning grants, I'm sorry, my back is to you, to determine exactly where the problems are and what the town constructively could do about it, potentially turning some of the underutilized parking lots, for example, into pervious surfaces, which is the opposite, obviously, of impervious, and potentially turning them into areas where there's gravel so that the groundwater can recharge and so that the flooding is reduced. I think those are a couple of points. And one thing I do want to say, understandably, for municipalities considering conforming, what's going on in the heads of local officials is often, so what does that really mean to us? What does it mean that we as a township are going to have to do if we conform to the regional master plan? And one of the most important services that we can provide is we can fund for you what's called an initial assessment grant. And that is an opportunity for the township to take a look at what's already on the books, because a great deal of the township is, frankly, built out and developed. Obviously not all of it, but a great deal. So you can look at what is currently on the books for the township and then what might be expected as part of conforming with the regional master plan. And that initial assessment will compare the two and inform the township exactly what might be needed to go into the next phase and to go into conformance. So that is a way, that's a really one of the best ways to identify what the town is currently doing and what might be suggested for the future. Because I don't know, frankly, all the answers. And I think you need to begin the process of looking at where the problems are to fully answer your question. So.
Could things like center designation help economic development?
Okay.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
we can have.
Sorry,
questions
I'm
or
sorry.
What
So
was
as
his-
I mentioned to the council.
If you want to answer his question, you can
What
speak
was
to
his
him over
question
there.
first? What was his question?
Well, his question was asking if things like Highlands Center designations can help a town like Parsippany. As I mentioned earlier, among the planning grants that we offer include economic development grants, downtown business redevelopment grants. So in that way, yes, we can assist. And center designations are another way for communities to identify sort of where they want the bulk of their development to be and what they want that to look like.
So we
Sir,
have,
I'm sure if you have any other questions, I'm sure you'll
Yes, absolutely.
speak with him over there.
Did you have anything to add to that?
I actually did. On the issue of economic development, we're in conversations with Morris County, and we're hoping that we're going to come up with some creative ways to answer some of the questions that Lisa just mentioned, the idea of the office buildings that are underutilized and other areas that are, gray fields where there's an opportunity to take the impervious surfaces that you already have, consider what it is that the township needs as part of their economic health. And we're not just talking about development, we're talking about how dollars move in and out of your community, and to take some creative looking at that, perhaps, as Lisa suggested, maybe using some local grant funding to determine what is it that maybe would benefit Parsippany Troy Hills, and then working with the county to look at it more regionally, because as you know, you get a lot of traffic that comes through your town, through all the adjacent towns, and we want to really look at it from a more regional standpoint, because to be honest, that's how the economy functions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just make a statement? I think one of the, before you leave, that one of the most important things going forward in consideration of our master plan is how we deal with this water issue. You know, because I mean, essentially it's a limited resource if we don't take care of it. And, you know, this seems like a perfect opportunity to take advantage of that. And I think the master plan, the Highlands Council and conformance with it works really as a regional effort, not just this town and that town. And I think, you know, because we affect Hanover, Hanover affects us, and I think it's necessary to take that into consideration as well. And I certainly think we're limiting more and more our open spaces. And we do see all these open parking lots that are not full. And that's just an impervious surface where the water is running right off, and we're not regenerating or recharging any of the, and that happened, as Nick pointed out, at Waterview with the aquifer that's there. So,
With the areas that we have empty commercial areas, and we have parking, do you come in and assist the developer if he wants to redevelop the area? Do you put restrictions on the development of the area?
So the first part of your question is, I'll remind you that our grants are planning grants.
Okay.
So we wouldn't, they're not for infrastructure, they're not for capital improvements. So in terms of stormwater management, we would help the town identify where the problem areas are and what the solutions might be. We wouldn't actually be out there with, you know, the jackhammer breaking up the parking lots. Do you want to talk a little bit about the development piece of that?
Yeah, what I was going to say is, if, say, you have one of these areas that are underutilized,
We have lots.
okay, and you wanted to determine from the township's perspective how you want that redeveloped, we can actually pay for the redevelopment planning, so that we wouldn't put in the restrictions, the township would, but we would assist you so that you can do the analysis to determine what's best for the town on that project.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm Pat Delafuente, 30 Deerfield Road in Lake Parsippany. Speaking as someone who's had experience being the water quality director for the Lake Parsippany Association, 2 points have been raised, and I really want to say, from time to time, the town has offered, wouldn't we like to have sidewalks all around Lake Parsippany? And to pay attention to 2 things that were raised here. One is impervious means paved, okay? We don't have it paved all around the lake. If we did, we would have rather phenomenal runoff. Right now, when it rains, we form little puddles around the grass and whatever, and it eventually gets absorbed. The other thing is, if we had sidewalks there, we would then be required to shovel them. So just in case it ever comes up that this seems like a lovely thing you could do for Lake Parsippany, just understand, and we were characterized as, you know, being against progress or whatever. Those are the 2 reasons why we don't want sidewalks there.
My name's Lori Chuth. I live at 58 Nokomis, Lake Hiawatha, which is right down the street from the library. I would like to endorse, I would like the town to become part of the regional master plan for a lot of reasons with the Highlands. It's very important, and I think people in this town, we don't want to see more development without some kind of real planning to it. You know, there's a lot of people here. We want to keep some of our wild places. It's very important. Also, I had a question for the commission. When you talk about stormwater structures, what does that mean exactly?
Ma'am, just speak into the mic.
Sorry.
Is that your only question, or do you have more questions?
That's really my question now.
Because we want you to ask all your questions, and then we'll answer them all.
Okay.
That's how we do it. Do you have any other questions of them, or no?
For them?
Yeah.
No, that's basically.
So stormwater structures could be detention basins, they could be manufactured treatment devices that remove suspended solids. The Highlands Council tends to lean towards green infrastructure, where you have plant-based materials and more natural systems, like a rain garden, help to remove the contaminants and suspended solids and recharge. And part of redevelopment of a site is basically to do that, to pre-plan, so when somebody comes in to redevelop a site, you already have the knowledge you can provide to them so they know what they need to do. We're currently working with Montville on a recharge project where they're planning to recharge water from Route 287 into big recharge basins just along 287. They're just designing it now. So, it's basically, when we say planning, it's not just planning, it's trying to get ahead of the game and put all of this stuff into place so when somebody comes in to develop something, you're doing the right thing and you're doing what the town wants to do.
Can I ask you, if you have more questions of them, can I ask you guys if she can just ask you guys back there? This way, in case something you tell her, you may have more questions of them.
One other thing. Actually, two other things. I believe at some point the town did contract with the Jersey City Reservoir in case we needed more water to be able to tap into the reservoir. Is that so?
The state mandated that we have an alternate water source.
Mm-hmm.
The state mandated that, so we did that. We have a contract with Jersey City, and we use 100 million gallons a year. We have to pay for it whether we use it or not.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay. Also,
And you get some of that water too. I think you can tell sometimes when the water tastes a little different.
Yes.
Okay, they're using up some of that 100 million gallons.
I see.
And the green tank on Knoll Road is the one that gets it. And all of us that are fortunate enough to get water from that green tank, we can tell when we have Jersey City water.
Did they put more chlorine in it?
No, well, see, Parsippany's water is pure. It's
Yeah.
groundwater,
I know, it's groundwater.
underground. It's artesian wells, high mineral content, but no foreign substances in it. Jersey City Reservoir is surface water. It takes runoff from the roads, the streets, the geese, the fish that live in there. Okay, so they have a very extensive process to purify their water to make it drinking water. So they used a lot of chemicals and a lot of processing to do that, which we don't have to do.
Yeah.
We put a little chlorine in our water and we're done.
Right.
So with all those chemicals and things in there, it tastes different.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, we're very fortunate to have the aquifer that we do. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, see no one else come forward, entertain a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero,
Yes.
Ms. Grignani,
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy.
Yes.
The floor is closed.
Council
Okay, thank you.
President, before the Highlands Council leaves, can I ask them a question?
Sure.
Regarding flood mitigation, when we had the big flood, the big hurricane here, and we had 480 homes underwater in lower Lake Hiawatha, one of the reasons for that,
Don't drink and drive.
well, first of all, from the Passaic River on back, all the tributaries backed up. So that was one of the reasons. The water couldn't flow as smoothly as it should. But also, the Jersey City Reservoir overflowed. Now, the governor, when the governor knows we're going to have a severe rainfall, he can order all dams and lakes to be lowered no more than 48 hours before the event. And he did that. But the Jersey City Reservoir has one pipe that's about a foot in diameter, and so they opened that up as they were required to do, and that lowered the Jersey City Reservoir by 4 inches. Now, the Jersey City Reservoir was built in the early 1900s simply to store water for Jersey City. It was never intended or designed for flood mitigation. Is there any way you people can help to force Jersey City to put in a floodgate? So if we do have a crisis like that again, okay, they can drop it 4 feet instead of 4 inches. And so it would delay the amount of time it would take for the water to build up to overflow. You know, the 4 feet worth would have given more time for water to go downstream and maybe not have 480 homes underwater, but have 200 or 100 homes underwater. It would have made a huge difference if it could have held up more of that water in the reservoir longer. But they would need a floodgate to do that. That's really not a question, something for you to ponder. I sure wish somebody, I tried talking to our legislators years ago when we had the flood to see if there's anything. Jersey City's not going to do it out of the.
One of the things we can bring as the Highlands Council is coordination with other state agencies. Obviously, Jersey City's, that's not our jurisdiction, but certainly we meet monthly with the Department of Environmental Protection and have relationships with other agencies as well that we can help.
Yeah, we're not a regulatory agency, we don't have the ability to force that.
No, I know you.
We certainly have the ability to sit down and have conversations and, see what might be.
Yeah, see, the agency that runs the reservoir for Jersey City, water is dollars, you know, from their perspective. And they're not going to lower the lake in advance and then the storm doesn't hit and they've lost a lot of revenue and they've lost a lot of water. So they're not anxious to cooperate in this way, so it's not going to be a cooperative thing. It has to be something that's forced down their throat, really.
What if we can help fund a flood hazard mitigation plan
not
in the township?
being constructed, they're still boarded up, it's a shame.
Food for thought.
It's terrible.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let's get on.
Status of adopted ordinances. Ordinance 2018-25, adopted November 20th. Mayoral action November 26th. Effective date December 18th. Ordinance 2018:26, adopted November 20th. Mayoral action November 30th. Effective date December 20th. Introduction none. Second reading and public hearing. Mr. DePiero.
Ordinance 2018:10, an ordinance establishing salary ranges for police superior officers of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills. The notice for the ordinance above was published in the Daily Record, the official newspaper of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills, on November 17, 2018. This ordinance was introduced at the October 30th, 2018 agenda meeting. Motion to accept that ordinance 2018:10 be heard in its second and final reading by title only.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion to open the public hearing for ordinance 2018:10.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero? Ms.
Yes.
Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Floor is open for this ordinance only. Seeing no one else?
See no one come forward. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to
Second.
close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Okay, floor is closed.
Ordinance 2000.
Whereas,
okay.
whereas the above ordinance was read in title on second reading
Wanna give-
and the hearing held thereon, now therefore be it resolved that said ordinance be passed on final reading and that a notice of final passage of said ordinance be published in the newspaper according to law. Motion to approve the above resolution.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Ordinance 2018:11, an ordinance establishing salary ranges for the patrolmen of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills, PBA. The notice for the ordinance above was published in the Daily Record, the official newspaper of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills, on November 17th, 2018. This ordinance was introduced at the October 30th, 2018 agenda meeting. Motion to accept the ordinance 2018:11 be heard in its second and final reading by title only.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. McCarthy, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion
Pub-
to open. Motion to open.
Motion to open the public.
Yeah, I was going to read that. Motion to open the public hearing for ordinance 2018:11.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. McCarthy, seconded by Mr. DePiero. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Floor is open for this ordinance only.
See no one come forward, entertain a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion.
Motion.
Okay, so motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Floor is closed. Whereas?
Whereas the above ordinance was read in title on the second reading and a hearing held thereon, now further be it resolved that said ordinance be passed on a final reading and that the notice of the final passing of said ordinance be published in the newspaper according to law. Motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. McCarthy, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes. Congratulations.
Okay, any questions on ordinance 27, 28, 29, or 30?
Yeah, I have a comment to make on regarding 29, 30, and also consent agenda item number 3 with Stanberry. As you will recall, I was
Okay.
trying to wrap my arms around pilot and what the long-term effects of a pilot would be in the township. And I did come up with the suggestion that if any of those apartments were sold as condos and any of those stores were sold as individual owners, okay, then Stanberry could make a whole bunch of money, and we couldn't tax any of that property because we're still under a pilot. And we corrected that. I moaned and groaned and we corrected it, and that's a good thing. But now I found something else that bothers me. Stanberry talks about in their agreement third-party partners, and I'm grappling with that term, and I'm thinking, what happens if, okay, Stanberry doesn't sell the apartments as individual condos, but they sell the whole apartment complex, all of the apartments, to a third-party partner. Let's say a round number, $50,000 per apartment, okay? 400 apartments, that's what, $20 million. So Stanberry could walk away with $20 million. We still have a pilot, and we get none of that $20 million. I am still uncomfortable with a pilot. I like the project, I like the Stanberry project, I like the layout. I liked it better in the initial proposal where the hotel was in Parsippany and half of the apartments were in Hanover. That was a better deal for Parsippany. Somehow Hanover worked a better deal than we did, and I'm not happy with that. I could still live with it as a development, but I'm really getting concerned with it as a pilot.
All right, any questions, any other, you said, okay, on the consent agenda, Mr. DePiero, you said you had a question about number 3?
Well, these are all Stanberry. Item 5, item 6, and also item 3 on the consent agenda.
Well, no, item 3,
Item 3 is
Councilmember
with RD.
DePiero is
Real
RD.
RD development.
RD.
Oh, that's RD, okay. No, that's
Do you have
fine.
any questions? Okay.
No, I'm
I
sorry.
have a question on number 2, please.
Okay.
I remember a while ago, there was talk about putting a sign on 287 by the municipal building.
A billboard right up here on the hill.
On the
Yeah.
hill? Is this what this
Yes.
resolution is?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Dolsky wanted to know about RD Realty?
I'm going to reach out to Mr. Dolsky
Okay.
in the time period between now and the next meeting and give him whatever information he needs with regards to that.
All right.
Approval of payroll and bills list. CFO Ancucci recommends authorization for payment. 1, authorized payment of the 12/17/18 regular and miscellaneous payroll estimated at $1.7 million. 2, payment of bills from voucher list of 12/15/18 through 12/17/18 totaling $1,369,116.46. Motion to approve authorization for payment.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Peterson, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Executive session, resolution, whereas the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231 permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Township Council is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, and whereas the Township Council wishes to discuss contract negotiations Habitat for Humanity, and whereas minutes will be kept, and once the matter involving the confidentiality of the above no longer requires confidentiality, the minutes can be made public. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills that the public be excluded from this meeting. Motion to adjourn into closed session.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Peterson, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes, just
We are
for
now
the
going
public's
to adjourn into
information,
closed
there'll be
session.
no action taken after this, so basically be it for the meeting.
Mike is out there.
It's okay.
Okay, entertain a motion to reconvene.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Peterson, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero is right
Yes.
there, yes?
Yes.
Ms.
All right?
Ms.
Yes.
Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy, Ms. Peterson, Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
All yeses?
Entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Who made it?
I did.
Ms.
Peterson.
Peterson, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero, yes? Mr. Ms. Grignani?
Yes. Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Go home, everybody.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Nobody said no.
Get my purse, please. Thank you.